A Korean Mafia boss walked into his daughter's nursery and found his black maid breastfeeding his baby. What he did next didn't just change 2 lives, it ignited a war that would leave bodies in the street and blood on his hands. But this isn't a story about scandal. It's about a woman who lost everything finding a reason to live again. It's about a man who ruled through fear learning that true power comes from love. And it's about a baby girl whose survival would cost more than anyone could have imagined. This is a story of poison and prayers, of violence and redemption, of a family forged not in tradition, but in fire. The fortress stood on the edge of Seoul like a warning. Steel gates, bulletproof glass, guards who never smiled. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. But no amount of luxury could hide what this place really was, the command center of one of Korea's most feared criminal organizations. Tonight, something was wrong. A baby's scream cut through the reinforced walls, sharp, desperate, fading. Baby Rain had been crying for 3 hours. 3 hours, and no one had come. In the war room on the 2nd floor, Minji Park sat motionless before a wall of monitors. His jaw was carved from stone, his dark suit impeccable, his eyes fixed on screens showing every corner of his territory. A phone pressed to his ear, he negotiated a weapons shipment in rapid Korean, his voice cold and precise. But every time his daughter's cry pierced the soundproofing, his hand tightened on the armrest. He told himself the nanny would handle it. That's what he paid her for. But the crying didn't stop. If anything, it was getting weaker. 3 floors below, in the staff quarters near the kitchen, Jarvis Omens knelt on the marble entryway with a scrub brush in her trembling hands. She'd been cleaning the same section for 20 minutes. Her vision blurred, her chest so tight she could barely breathe. 7 weeks. It had been 7 weeks since she buried her daughter. 7 weeks since she held Jalen for the last and only time. Her tiny, perfect body already cold, the umbilical cord still attached, the hospital room silent except for Jarvis's screams. Every cry from upstairs tore the wound open again. She pressed the brush harder against the floor, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. Please, God, make it stop, please. I can't do this again. But Rain's cries intensified, ragged now, choking, the sound of a child in agony. Jarvis's hands stilled. Something was wrong. This wasn't normal crying. This was pain. She looked toward the grand staircase, her heart hammering. Staff weren't allowed in the family wing. She'd been told explicitly, know your place, stay invisible. But that scream. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. The brush clattered to the floor. She ran, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls, one hand on the marble railing, her lips moving in silent prayer. Please let her be okay. Please. God, not again. Not another baby. She burst through the nursery door and froze. The room was suffocating. Too hot. The air thick with a sickly sweet chemical smell. Baby Rain lay in her designer crib, convulsing. Foam gathered at the corners of her tiny mouth. Her skin burned with fever, her lips cracked and gray. Her eyes rolled back, showing only whites. On the nightstand beside the crib sat a bottle of formula, its contents separated, curdled, wrong. Poison. Jarvis didn't think. She lunged forward, scooping Rain into her arms. The baby was burning up, her little body rigid with seizures, her breathing shallow and desperate. No, no, no. Jarvis's voice cracked. The hospital was 30 minutes away. Rain didn't have 30 minutes. She had seconds. And then Jarvis felt it. The familiar ache in her breasts. The heaviness that hadn't left even though Jalen was gone. Her body still produced milk. Milk meant for a daughter who would never drink it. Her hands shook as she looked down at the dying infant in her arms. Every fiber of her being screamed, no, this would hurt too much, feel too much like replacing Jalen, break her all over again. But Rain's lips moved weakly, searching for comfort that wasn't there. Jarvis's tears fell on the baby's face as she unbuttoned her uniform with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry, Jalen," she whispered to the ghost of her daughter. "But I can't let another baby die, not tonight." She brought Rain to her breast, and the baby latched on desperately, instinctively. The room fell silent except for the soft sound of Rain feeding, and Jarvis's quiet sobs. For the first time in 3 hours the mansion was still. But in the hallway outside, footsteps approached. Heavy, deliberate, closer. Jarvis looked up as the door swung open, her heart stopping. Minji Park stood in the doorway, his hand still on the handle, his eyes wide with shock. For a long, frozen moment he stared at the scene before him, his black maid, tears streaming down her face, nursing his daughter in the dim light of the nursery. The silence stretched between them like a blade. Then Minji's voice came out low, dangerous, confused. "What the hell are you doing?" Earlier that evening, before the world changed, Jarvis had been invisible. That's how she preferred it. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant no one asked questions about the hollow look in her eyes or why her hands shook when she passed the nursery. She'd arrived at the Park mansion 6 weeks ago, desperate for work, desperate for anything that would keep her mind occupied. The employment agency had been blunt. "The pay is excellent, but the family is complicated. You'll be cleaning staff only. No interaction with the family. Can you handle that?" Jarvis had nodded. She could handle anything if it meant she didn't have to think about the empty apartment waiting for her back in Itaewon. The apartment where Jalen's unused crib still stood in the corner, where baby clothes she'd never worn hung in the closet, where every surface held the ghost of a future that would never exist. The Park mansion was a different kind of haunted. It was a mausoleum disguised as a home, cold despite its luxury, silent despite the dozens of staff moving through its halls. The other workers avoided her, whether because of her race or her grief. She couldn't tell. Maybe both. She learned quickly. Don't ask questions. Don't make eye contact. Clean what you're told to clean, then disappear. She learned that Minji Park was a widower, that his wife Soyeon had died 2 months ago giving birth to their daughter. She learned that he never held the baby, never came to the nursery, spent his nights locked in his office conducting the brutal business that kept his empire running. She learned that the mansion's beauty was a lie. Behind the marble and gold were surveillance cameras, panic rooms, weapons caches. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress preparing for war. And tonight, war had come. Upstairs in the war room, Minji had been in the middle of negotiating when his second-in-command, Junho, had interrupted with urgent news. The Kong Syndicate was making moves in Gangnam, testing boundaries, seeing how far they could push. Minji's response had been ice cold. Then pushback. Hard. But even as he gave orders, even as he watched his territory on the monitors, his daughter's cries had been a persistent knife in his concentration. Where was Hana? The nanny was supposed to be competent, came with impeccable references from another family in the organization. He'd checked the cameras. The nursery feed showed Rain alone in her crib, screaming. No sign of Hana. Minji's jaw had tightened. He'd excused himself from the call, his patience finally exhausted. If he had to handle this himself, so be it. But as he'd walked down the hallway toward the nursery, something had shifted in the sound of Rain's crying. It had gotten quieter. Then it had stopped completely. His heart had lurched. He'd started running. What he found when he opened that door defied every rule, every boundary, every wall he'd built around himself since Soyeon died. Now, standing in the doorway, Minji's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The maid, Jarvis, he remembered her name distantly, was holding his daughter, nursing her. Rain's tiny hand clutched at the woman's uniform, her eyes closed in contentment, her breathing steady and calm. The sight should have enraged him. Instead, something twisted in his chest, something he couldn't name. Jarvis's voice came out broken, terrified. "Mr. Park, she was dying. The formula..." She gestured shakily toward the nightstand. Minji's eyes followed her gesture. He crossed the room in 3 strides, picked up the bottle, and brought it to his nose. The smell hit him immediately. Almond sweet, unmistakable, cyanide derivative, professional grade. His blood turned to ice. Someone had poisoned his daughter. His hand crushed the bottle, plastic cracking in his grip. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. How long has she been like this? I found her 5 minutes ago. She was convulsing, foam at her mouth. Jarvis's voice broke. The hospital was too far. She didn't have time. I couldn't let her die. Minji looked at her properly for the first time. Really looked. He saw the tears on her face, the way her whole body trembled, the agony in her eyes that spoke of some deep, personal hell. This woman wasn't trying to manipulate him. She was barely holding herself together. You saved her life, he said quietly. Jarvis nodded, unable to speak. Minji pulled out his phone, dialed Junho. Find Hana Lee, bring her to the warehouse, alive. His eyes never left the poisoned bottle. And get Dr. Elvis here immediately. My daughter's been exposed to cyanide. He ended the call and turned back to Jarvis. Rain had fallen asleep in her arms, peaceful, her little chest rising and falling steadily. The sight of them together, this black woman holding his Korean daughter with such tender care, should have felt wrong in a dozen different ways. Instead, it felt like the first right thing he'd seen in months. But this was his world. A world where weakness got you killed. Where rivals would see this moment. A maid nursing his child as the ultimate vulnerability. He hardened his voice, forcing steel back into his tone. Go back to your quarters. Tell no one about this. Jarvis carefully stood, moving to lay Rain back in the crib. The moment she did, the baby whimpered, her small face scrunching up, already seeking the comfort she'd just lost. Jarvis's face crumpled. She needs... I said go. Minji's voice was sharp enough to cut. Jarvis fled. Her footsteps quick on the marble, her shoulders shaking. Alone with his daughter, Minji stood over the crib and watched Rain settle into fitful sleep. His hands were shaking, with rage, with something else he refused to examine. Someone had tried to kill his child, in his own home, under his protection. And a woman he barely knew, a woman with no reason to risk herself, had saved her. He picked up the poisoned bottle with careful fingers, his mind already racing through the implications. This wasn't random. This was targeted, professional, designed to look like an accident. The Kangs? Possibly. But they usually went for direct hits, not poison. Which meant the threat was closer. Much closer. Minji's phone buzzed. Dr. Elvis would arrive in 10 minutes. Junho had located Hana at a high-end hotel in Gangnam, credit cards showing recent shopping sprees far beyond her salary. Good. He'd have answers soon enough. But as he stood there in the nursery, watching his daughter sleep, Minji couldn't stop seeing Jarvis's face. The tears, the terror, the fierce protectiveness as she'd held Rain close. Something had shifted tonight. He didn't know what it meant yet. But he knew, with a cold certainty that settled in his bones, that nothing would ever be the same again. Before we continue with what happened next, I need you to hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get darker, and you won't want to miss a single moment of what Minji discovers about the people he trusted most. Dr. Elvis arrived within minutes, a stern woman in her 60s who'd been treating the Park family for decades. She examined Rain with efficient hands, drawing blood, checking vitals, her face giving nothing away. Minji stood at the window, his back to the room, phone pressed to his ear as Junho delivered his report. We have Hana. She's not talking yet, but her bank records tell a story. 200,000 deposited 3 days ago from an offshore account, another 300,000 scheduled to transfer tomorrow. Don't let her lawyer up, Minji said quietly. I'll be there within the hour. Dr. Elvis cleared her throat. He turned. The baby will be fine, she said, packing up her equipment. Whatever poison was in that formula, she didn't ingest enough to cause permanent damage. Whoever fed her... She paused, choosing her words carefully. They saved her life. Another 10 minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation. Minji's jaw tightened. How much did she ingest? Enough to cause the seizures and fever, not enough to stop her heart. If she'd drunk the full bottle... Dr. Elvis didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. After the doctor left, Minji sat in the armchair beside Rain's crib. His daughter slept peacefully now, her small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. So fragile, so dependent on him for protection. And he'd failed her. He'd been so consumed with business, with maintaining control, with drowning his grief in work that he hadn't even noticed his daughter's screams for 3 hours. What kind of father did that make him? The image of Jarvis holding Rain kept replaying in his mind. The way she'd cradled his daughter with such gentleness, despite her own obvious pain. The tears streaming down her face as she'd nursed a child that wasn't hers. Why would she do that? Risk her job, her position, everything, for a baby she barely knew? Minji had built his empire on understanding motivation. Everyone wanted something. Money, power, protection, revenge. But what did Jarvis want? She'd asked for nothing, expected nothing. She'd just acted. It unsettled him more than he cared to admit. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Heard there was an incident. Coming tomorrow morning. Minji closed his eyes. Of course the staff had already been gossiping. In a household this size, secrets lasted about as long as snow in summer. By morning, everyone would know that the black maid had been in the nursery, that she'd held the baby, that she'd crossed every boundary of propriety and hierarchy. And his mother would have opinions. Strong ones. Minji stood, looking down at his sleeping daughter one last time. I'll keep you safe, he whispered, whatever it costs. Even as he said it, he wondered if he'd already paid too high a price. 3 floors below, Jarvis sat on the edge of her narrow bed, her whole body shaking. Her uniform was still unbuttoned, her breasts aching from the sudden feeding. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. She'd saved the baby. Rain was alive because of her. So why did she feel like she was dying? Because holding that child, feeling her small body against her chest, had brought Jalen back with devastating clarity. For those few minutes, Jarvis hadn't been in a stranger's mansion in a foreign country. She'd been in that hospital room, holding her daughter, begging God for just one more minute, one more breath. One more chance to say I love you. But God hadn't listened then. And now Jarvis had given her milk, the milk that should have been Jalen's, to someone else's child. The guilt felt like drowning. I'm sorry, baby girl, she whispered into the darkness of her room. I'm so sorry. She thought of Minji Park's face when he'd found her. The shock, the confusion, then that flash of something else. Not gratitude, something colder, more calculating. The look of a man doing math, weighing costs and benefits. He'd told her to tell no one, which meant he saw this as a problem, not a miracle. Jarvis wasn't stupid. She knew what she'd done had crossed lines. In America, it would have been complicated. In Korea, in this world of rigid hierarchies and criminal power, it was probably unforgivable. She should pack her bag, leave before they fired her, before the shame became unbearable. But even as she thought it, she knew she couldn't. Because upstairs in that nursery was a baby girl who'd been poisoned by someone close enough to get inside these walls. A baby whose father was too consumed by his empire to notice she was dying. A baby who'd reached for Jarvis with tiny, desperate hands and held on like she'd found something she needed. Jarvis had failed to save Jalen. Maybe saving Rain could be her penance, or maybe it would destroy them both. In the war room, Minji stood before the wall of monitors, watching footage from the nursery on rewind. There, Hana entering with a bottle at 6:47 p.m. She placed it on the nightstand, checked her phone, then left quickly, her movements nervous, guilty. At 7:15, she exited the mansion entirely, telling the gate guard she had a family emergency. The cameras showed no one else entering the nursery until Jarvis burst through the door at 9:52 p.m. 3 hours. His daughter had been screaming for 3 hours while he sat one floor below, too busy to care. The shame of it burned like acid. Junho appeared in the doorway. "Boss, Hana's at the warehouse. She's asking for a lawyer." Minji's smile was cold. "Tell her she can have one. After she talks to me." He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Someone had tried to murder his daughter. By morning, he'd know who, and by the time he was finished with them, they'd wish they'd never been born. But as he walked through the mansion's halls, passing the closed door of Jarvis's quarters, he couldn't shake the image burned into his mind. A woman weeping as she saved a child that wasn't hers, giving everything, asking nothing. In his world, that kind of selflessness didn't exist, which meant either she was the best con artist he'd ever met, or she was something far more dangerous. Someone real. Morning came too quickly. Jarvis woke to harsh sunlight streaming through her small window and the sound of raised voices somewhere in the mansion. She dressed quickly in a fresh uniform, her hands still trembling from the night before. When she emerged into the service hallway, the other staff members fell silent. 3 maids stood clustered near the laundry room, their conversation dying the moment they saw her. She felt their stares like physical weight as she walked past. In the kitchen, the head cook, Mrs. Han, gave her a sharp look. "Mr. Park wants you to stay in the staff areas today. No cleaning upstairs." "Yes, ma'am." "And Jarvis?" Mrs. Han's voice softened slightly. "Whatever happened last night, be careful. This family has rules." Jarvis nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She spent the morning scrubbing floors in the basement, trying to stay invisible, trying not to think about Rain upstairs. Was the baby okay? Had she eaten? Was someone holding her when she cried, or was she alone again? The questions tore at her, but she kept her head down and worked. At 10 o'clock, a black Mercedes pulled up to the mansion's front entrance. Through a window, Jarvis watched an elegant, older woman emerge. Designer handbag, perfectly styled hair, an air of authority that preceded her like a weapon. Mrs. Park, Minji's mother. The staff scattered like startled birds. Whatever was about to happen, no one wanted to be caught in the crossfire. In Minji's office, the confrontation was already underway. "What were you thinking?" Mrs. Park's voice was ice wrapped in silk. She stood before her son's desk, spine rigid with fury. "The entire household is talking. The security team, the staff, even the guards at the gate." Minji sat motionless, his face carefully blank. "Talking about what, mother?" "Don't play games with me. The American maid was in Rain's nursery, holding her, nursing her." She spat the last word like poison. "Do you understand what this looks like? It looks like someone saved my daughter's life while I was too busy to notice she was dying." Mrs. Park's eyes flashed. "You don't know anything about this woman, where she came from, what she wants." "She wants nothing," Minji interrupted quietly. "I checked her background this morning. Jarvis Omens, 27 years old. Arrived in Seoul 2 months ago on a work visa. Before that, Los Angeles. No criminal record, no debts, no connections to any rival organizations." He paused. "And 7 weeks ago, she lost her newborn daughter to complications during childbirth." The room fell silent. Mrs. Park's face softened for a moment, then hardened again. "That's tragic. Truly. But it doesn't change the impropriety of what happened. She crossed a line." "She saved Rain's life," Minji said, his voice sharp enough to cut. "The formula was poisoned. If Jarvis hadn't acted, your granddaughter would be dead." His mother's face went pale. "Poisoned? Who?" "I'm handling it." Before she could respond, the office door opened. Uncle Jin-ho entered without knocking, his expensive suit doing nothing to hide the calculation in his eyes. "Minji, mother." He nodded to each of them, then settled into a chair uninvited. "I heard about last night's incident." "Troubling news?" "The poisoning or the gossip?" Minji asked coldly. Jinho waved a hand. Both, naturally. But nephew, you must understand how this appears to the organization. A maid, a foreign maid, nursing your daughter? People are talking about weakness, about judgment compromised by grief. He leaned forward. In our world, appearances are everything. This makes you look desperate, vulnerable. I don't care how it looks. You should. Jinho's voice hardened. The Kangs are watching for any sign of weakness. The moment they think you're distracted, emotional, making decisions based on sentiment rather than strategy. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Mrs. Park moved closer to her son's desk. Jinho is right. I know you're grateful to this woman, and perhaps we should give her a bonus, a reference for another position. But she cannot stay here. The damage to your reputation. My reputation, Minji said quietly, has been built on being ruthless, efficient, and absolutely loyal to family. Last night, Jarvis Omen showed more loyalty to my daughter than anyone in this household, than me included. The words landed like slaps. Jinho's smile was thin. Loyalty? Or manipulation? She lost her own child. Now she's attaching herself to yours. It's classic replacement behavior. Some might even call it disturbed. Some might call it compassion, Minji countered. Compassion is a luxury we cannot afford. His uncle stood, buttoning his jacket. The men are already questioning. If you show weakness over a staff member, worse, a foreign woman, they'll wonder what other decisions you're making from emotion rather than reason. He moved toward the door, then paused. Think carefully, Minji. Your enemies are watching. Make sure they see a leader, not a grieving father who's lost his way. After he left, Mrs. Park approached her son, her voice softer now. I'm not heartless, Minji. I understand what you're feeling. But in this world, in this life we lead, you cannot afford attachments to people outside the family, especially not to someone so far outside our world. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Either she goes, or I will question your ability to lead this family. I won't be the only one. She left, her heels clicking against marble. Alone in his office, Minji stared at the files spread across his desk. Financial reports, territory maps, intelligence briefs, the mechanisms of power that kept his empire running. And in the center of it all, a personnel file with a photo attached. Jarvis Omens, 27. Dark skin, careful eyes, a smile in the picture that looked like it had been forced for the camera. He'd spent the early morning hours digging into her background. Everything his uncle and mother said was technically correct. She had crossed a line. The optics were terrible. His rivals would see it as exploitable weakness. But they were wrong about her motives. He'd seen her face last night. That hadn't been manipulation. That had been a woman breaking herself open to save a child she didn't know, giving everything, asking nothing. In his entire life, Minji had never met anyone who operated that way. His world was built on transactions, on leverage, on the constant calculation of cost and benefit. Jarvis didn't fit into any of those categories, which made her dangerous in ways his family couldn't begin to understand. The smart play was obvious. Pay her off, send her away, eliminate the problem. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was Rain's face, peaceful for the first time in hours, as she slept in Jarvis's arms. His daughter had been dying, and a stranger had saved her. What did he owe for that? Everything. Nothing. He didn't know anymore. In the basement, Jarvis heard the whispers even before she saw the staff members. Two gardeners talking in rapid Korean, occasional English words filtering through, inappropriate, shame, trying to replace her own baby. She kept scrubbing, her eyes burning, her hands moving mechanically across the floor. She'd known this would happen, known that saving Rain would come with consequences. But she'd do it again, 1,000 times over, because some things mattered more than reputation or rules or staying in your place. Some things mattered more than survival, like making sure one more baby didn't die while the world looked away. The summons came at 4 in the afternoon. A security guard appeared in the kitchen where Jarvis was peeling vegetables, his face carefully neutral. "Mr. Park wants to see you. His office. Now." The other staff members went silent. Jarvis set down the peeler with trembling hands and followed the guard through corridors that seemed longer than they'd ever been. The office was on the second floor, behind a heavy oak door. The guard knocked once, then opened it and gestured for Jarvis to enter. Minji stood at the window, his back to her. The room was dark despite the afternoon sun. Heavy curtains drawn, a single lamp casting long shadows. Maps covered one wall. Territory marked in red and blue, borders between power and danger. A glass case held what looked like antique weapons. Knives, a revolver, something older that might have been a sword. This wasn't just an office, it was a war room. "Close the door," Minji said without turning. Jarvis did, her heart hammering so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. "Sit." She sat in the chair across from his desk, her hands clasped tight in her lap. Minji finally turned to face her. His eyes were unreadable, dark, assessing, giving nothing away. He moved to his desk but didn't sit, instead leaning against it, arms crossed. "You saved my daughter's life," he said quietly. "I don't know how to repay that debt." Jarvis's throat was too tight to speak. She shook her head slightly, trying to convey that she wanted nothing. "The formula was poisoned with a cyanide derivative, professional grade. If you hadn't acted when you did, Rain would have died before any doctor could reach her." He paused. "The nanny, Hana Lee, confessed this morning. She was paid by a rival organization to kill my daughter." Horror washed through Jarvis. "Oh my God." "She's been dealt with." Minji's voice was flat, and Jarvis understood immediately what that meant. She felt sick. "I checked your background," he continued. "I know about your daughter, Jalen. I'm sorry for your loss." Tears burned Jarvis's eyes. She blinked them back hard. "I understand why you did what you did, and I'm grateful. More than I can express." Minji's jaw tightened. "But you need to leave." The words hit like a physical blow. Jarvis had expected this, but hearing it still felt like the ground opening beneath her. "Mr. Park, I'm giving you 3 months' salary as severance. Junho will arrange a flight back to Los Angeles, and I'll provide a recommendation for any future employer." His voice was careful, controlled. "What you did was heroic. But my mother is right. This situation has become complicated. People are talking. My organization is built on perception, and right now, perception is that I'm making emotional decisions." He finally met her eyes. "I can't afford that." Jarvis stood on shaking legs. "She needs me. She has doctors, nurses. My mother can help until I hire a new nanny. She needs someone who'll notice when she's dying." The words burst out before Jarvis could stop them. "Someone who'll hear her crying and actually come. Someone who cares about her as more than just a job or a duty." Minji's face hardened. "You don't know what she needs. You don't know this world. I know what it's like to lose a child." Jarvis's voice cracked. "I know what it's like to be helpless, to watch them slip away, to have one chance to save them and fail." She stepped closer, desperation making her bold. "I couldn't save my daughter, but I saved yours. And you're going to throw me out because it makes you look weak? Because it makes us targets." Minji's control finally cracked. "Do you understand what my enemies will do if they think I care about you? If they see you as leverage?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "The moment they believe you matter to me, they'll hurt you to hurt me. That's how this works." "Then don't let me matter." Jarvis's voice dropped to a whisper. "Let me stay. As staff. As nothing. I don't need acknowledgement or gratitude. I just..." She couldn't finish. "Just need one more chance to hold a baby who's still breathing. Just need to believe I'm not completely broken. Just need something that makes sense in a world that's taken everything." But she couldn't say any of that. Minji looked at her for a long moment. Something passed across his face. Regret, maybe, or recognition. Then he shuddered it away. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice held genuine pain. "But my answer is final. Junho will have everything arranged by tomorrow morning." Jarvis felt herself fracturing. "Please, let me say goodbye to her. Just let me hold her one more time." Minji's jaw worked. For a second she thought he might agree. Then he shook his head. "No. Clean breaks are better. For both of you." The cruelty of it took her breath away. She stood there shaking, her last desperate plea dying in her throat. Then she straightened her spine, finding some final reserve of dignity. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Park." Her voice was steady now, cold. "That baby knows love. She felt it last night when I held her. She'll remember. Even if you don't want her to." She moved toward the door. "Babies know when they're safe. And they know when they're alone. You're choosing to make her alone." She walked out before he could respond, her vision blurred with tears. Behind her, Minji stood frozen at his desk. Her final words echoed in the silence. "Babies know when they're safe. And they know when they're alone." He'd told himself this was the right choice. The smart choice. The only choice that protected Rain from becoming a target, that protected his organization from appearing weak, that protected him from feeling things he couldn't afford to feel. But as he stood there in his war room, surrounded by maps of territory he controlled and weapons he'd used to defend it, all he could think about was his daughter upstairs, alone, just like he'd been since Soyeon died. From the nursery 3 floors above, a baby's cry began. Faint at first, then growing stronger. Minji closed his eyes, his hands gripping the desk until his knuckles turned white. He'd made his choice. Now he'd have to live with it. Jarvis left the mansion at dawn, carrying the same small duffel bag she'd arrived with 7 weeks ago. No one came to see her off. The morning shift guards avoided her eyes as they opened the gate. Seoul stretched before her, a city of 10 million people where she knew exactly no one, spoke almost none of the language, and had nowhere to go. She stood on the street outside the fortress walls, the bag heavy in her hand, and tried to figure out what came next, but all she could hear was Rain crying. Inside the mansion, the crying didn't stop. Day 1. Minji hired a new nanny through an agency his mother trusted. The woman was Korean, older, with decades of experience and impeccable references. She arrived with a suitcase full of credentials and left 6 hours later, exhausted and apologetic. "I've never seen anything like it," she told Minji, her professional composure cracking. "The baby won't eat, won't sleep, just cries and turns away from every bottle. It's like she's refusing." Day 2. They tried another nanny, then another. Rain's cries grew hoarse, weaker. She barely had the strength to scream anymore, just a constant, heartbreaking whimper that filled the mansion like a ghost. Minji stopped sleeping. He spent his nights in the nursery, holding his daughter, rocking her, trying everything he could think of. But Rain turned her face away from every bottle, her small body growing lighter, more fragile. "Please, Rain," he whispered in the darkness. "Please, baby girl, you have to eat." But she didn't. Day 3. His business began suffering. Calls went unanswered. Meetings were canceled. Junho handled what he could, but the organization was beginning to notice. Their boss was distracted, emotional, making mistakes. The Kangs noticed too. They pushed harder in Gangnam, testing boundaries, taking territory. Minji barely registered it. All he could focus on was his daughter's weakening cries. Uncle Jinho came by on the evening of the 3rd day, his concern wrapped in thinly veiled criticism. "This is what I warned you about. You're losing control because you can't control your emotions." "Get out," Minji said quietly. "The men are talking." "I said get out." Jinho left, but his words lingered. "You're losing control." Maybe he was. Minji didn't care anymore. Day 4. Mrs. Park arrived with a pediatric specialist in tow, Dr. Kim, one of Seoul's most respected physicians. The man examined Rain with gentle, thorough hands, checking her heart, her reflexes, her responses. When he finished, his face was grave. Physically, there's nothing wrong with her, Dr. Kim said. No illness, no defects. But emotionally, he paused, choosing his words carefully. She's exhibiting signs of severe attachment trauma. Minji's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means she's formed a profound bond with someone specific. When that bond was severed suddenly, violently, her body and mind went into a kind of shock. Dr. Kim looked at Minji with sympathy. In essence, Mr. Park, your daughter is grieving. And grief in infants can be life-threatening. She's 2 months old, Minji said, his voice breaking. How can she grieve? Infants form attachments from the moment they're born. Touch, scent, sound. They know their caregivers on a primal level. When those connections are broken suddenly, he gestured to Rain, lying weak and listless in her crib. This is the result. Mrs. Park spoke up, her voice tight. Can't we form a new attachment? Find someone else? It's possible, Dr. Kim said, but it will take time, weeks, maybe months, and in her current state, I'm not sure she has that long. He turned to Minji. Mr. Park, I need to ask you something difficult. Has there been any major change in her care recently? Someone who was present who's now gone? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Minji closed his eyes. Yes. How long ago? 4 days. Dr. Kim nodded slowly. Then that's your answer. If you want your daughter to survive, you need to bring that person back. After the doctor left, Minji stood at the window of his office, staring out at nothing. Behind him, his mother sat in silence, her usual composure shattered. You have to find her, she finally said. The American woman, Jarvis. I know. I was wrong. Mrs. Park's voice cracked. I thought I was protecting you, protecting the family, but I was just afraid. Minji turned to look at his mother. She looked older suddenly, smaller. Afraid of what? Of losing you the way we lost your father. Of watching you make choices from emotion rather than strategy and having it destroy you. She stood, moving to stand beside him. Your father died because he loved too openly. Trusted too easily. I swore I'd never let that happen to you. Mother? But I was wrong, she continued. What that woman did, saving Rain without thought for herself, giving everything, asking nothing. That's not manipulation. That's... She stopped, unable to find the word. Love, Minji finished quietly. Mrs. Park nodded. Find her. Bring her home. And this time, don't let pride or fear or what the men might think stand in your way. She touched his face gently. Your daughter is dying, Minji. Nothing else matters. That night, Minji sat beside Rain's hospital crib. They'd admitted her that evening when she became too weak to cry. Feeding tubes ran into her tiny body. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking a heartbeat that was growing slower. He held her small hand in his, tears running freely down his face for the first time since Soyeon died. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Rain. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was being strong. He bent his head, his shoulders shaking. But I was just a coward. I was afraid of needing someone, afraid of caring about someone outside our world. And you're paying the price for my fear. Rain's eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused, searching for something that wasn't there. Minji's voice broke completely. I'll find her. I promise. I'll bring her back. Even if it meant admitting he'd been wrong, even if it meant showing weakness to his entire organization, even if it meant acknowledging that he needed someone, that his daughter needed someone, more than he needed pride or control or power. None of that mattered anymore. Nothing mattered except the dying baby in front of him, searching for the one person who'd made her feel safe. Minji pulled out his phone and called Junho. Find Jarvis Omens. Every resource we have. I don't care what it costs or how long it takes. Find her. Boss, are you sure? Find her, Minji repeated, his voice raw. Before my daughter dies. He ended the call and turned back to Rain. Her breathing was shallow, her skin too pale. Hold on, he whispered. Just hold on a little longer. But with each passing hour, he became less certain she could. While Rain fought for her life, Minji's men worked with brutal efficiency. Junho had organized a full-scale manhunt within hours, dividing the city into sectors, deploying teams to hospitals, shelters, hotels, anywhere a foreign woman alone might seek refuge. But Jarvis had vanished. On the second day of the search, Junho brought different news to Minji's hospital vigil. We found Hana Lee. Minji looked up from where he'd been sitting beside Rain's crib, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. I thought she was dealt with. She was supposed to be on a plane to Thailand. Our people at the warehouse let her go after the initial interrogation. They thought you'd gotten what you needed. Junho's face was grim. Turns out she had more to tell. Airport security flagged her trying to board a flight to Tokyo with 500,000 in cash. Minji stood slowly. Bring her to the warehouse. Now. The warehouse in Namyangju was one of Minji's oldest holdings. Isolated, soundproof, the kind of place where questions got answered whether people wanted to answer them or not. He arrived to find Hana Lee zip-tied to a chair, her expensive clothes disheveled, mascara running down her face. Two of his men stood guard. Junho waited by the door. Minji dismissed everyone except Junho, then pulled up a chair directly in front of Hana. He sat, elbows on his knees, and studied her for a long moment. You poisoned my daughter, he said quietly. Hana started crying immediately. I didn't know she'd survive. I didn't want to do it. They made me. Who's they? The Kang Syndicate. They approached me 6 months ago before I even started working for you. Said they'd pay me to get close to your family, to wait for instructions. She was talking fast now, words tumbling over each other. I didn't know what they wanted at first. I thought maybe just information. But then they told you to kill a 2-month-old baby. Minji finished. Hana sobbed. They said it would look like Sid's, that no one would question it, that I'd get 500,000 and disappear to Thailand, start over. Names, Minji interrupted. Who in the Kang organization contacted you? A lieutenant named Sung, he said. She stopped abruptly, her face going pale. What did he say? He said your uncle approved the plan, that Uncle Jinho wanted it done quickly, while you were still grieving your wife and distracted. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He said once Rain was dead, you'd fall apart completely, and Jinho would take control of the organization. The words landed like bullets. Minji stood slowly, his mind reeling. His uncle, his own blood, had conspired to murder his daughter. You're lying, he said, but even as he spoke, pieces started falling into place. Jinho's sudden visits. His pointed comments about weakness and emotion, his insistence that Jarvis be fired immediately, that the situation be handled quietly. He'd wanted Jarvis gone not because she was improper, but because she'd saved Rain, ruining the plan. I have proof, Hana said desperately. Text messages, recordings. They're on my phone. I kept them as insurance. Junho handed Minji the phone they'd confiscated. He scrolled through, his face growing colder with each message. There it was. Detailed planning, payment schedules, and multiple messages from a number he recognized, his uncle's personal line. Make it look natural. No suspicion. The maid is a problem. If she saw the formula, she needs to disappear too. Once the baby is gone, he'll break. That's when we move. Minji's hands shook as he read. Not from fear. From rage so pure and cold it felt like ice in his veins. He looked at Junho. Where is my uncle? At the family house in Pyeongchangdong. Get him. Bring him to the main house. Tell him it's urgent family business. Minji's voice was deadly calm. Don't let him make any calls. Junho nodded and left immediately. Minji turned back to Hana. One more question. Where is Jarvis Omens? Hana's face crumpled. I don't know, I swear. But your uncle, he said she wouldn't last a week on Seoul streets. Foreign woman, doesn't speak Korean, no money. He said, she stopped. Say it. He said she'd probably end up dead in an alley somewhere, and it would solve both problems at once. Minji's control finally snapped. He grabbed Hana by the front of her shirt and hauled her up, the chair scraping against concrete. If she's dead because you and my uncle decided my daughter was expendable, his voice was barely human. I will make you wish you'd died with her. He dropped her back in the chair and walked out, leaving her sobbing. Outside, he pulled out his phone and called the search teams. Expand to the rougher areas, homeless camps, street corners in Itaewon and Hongdae, hospitals that take uninsured patients. His voice cracked slightly. Find her, before it's too late. 2 hours later, Minji sat in his office at the main house, the recorded confession playing on speaker. His mother sat beside him, her face ashen. Other senior members of the organization stood around the room, their expressions ranging from shock to fury. When the recording ended, Uncle Jin-ho stood in the center of the room, surrounded by Minji's men. He'd arrived 20 minutes ago, confident and smiling. Now his confidence was evaporating rapidly. This is fabricated, he said, but his voice wavered. The Kangs are trying to divide us. Minji played another recording. Jin-ho's voice, clear and unmistakable. The baby is leverage. Remove the leverage, remove his strength. The room went silent. Mrs. Park stood, her whole body trembling. You tried to murder your own niece? Your brother's grandchild? Jin-ho's face twisted. Don't pretend you cared about that baby. Soyeon died giving birth to her. Every time Minji looks at Rain, he sees his failure to protect his wife. That child has been destroying him from the inside since she was born. He turned to Minji. I did this for you. For the family. You've been weak, distracted, making decisions based on emotion. Shut your mouth, Minji said quietly. And now you're obsessed with some American woman who means nothing. Minji moved faster than anyone expected. His fist connected with Jin-ho's jaw with a sickening crack. The older man went down hard. She saved my daughter's life, Minji said, standing over his uncle, while you were plotting to end it. So tell me, uncle, who's the real threat to this family? Jin-ho struggled to his knees, spitting blood. You've gone soft. You care more about a foreign maid than about the organization your father built. My father built this organization to protect family, Minji interrupted. You tried to destroy mine, and for that? He looked at his men. Get him out of my sight. Take him to the secondary warehouse. Hold him there until I decide what to do with him. As they dragged Jin-ho away, the man's composure finally shattered. You'll regret this. The Kangs won't stop. They'll come for her. For the baby. For everyone you care about. The door closed on his threats. Minji turned to his mother. His voice was raw when he spoke. I'm going to find Jarvis. And when I do, she's coming home. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. No one moved. Mrs. Park stepped forward and embraced her son. Find her, she whispered. Bring her home to Rain. Nothing else matters. Minji nodded, pulled away, and headed for the door. But before he left, he turned back to address the room. Spread the word through the organization. Jarvis Omens is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or interferes with bringing her home will answer to me personally. His eyes swept the assembled men. And tell the Kangs, if they've hurt her, there won't be a place in Seoul they can hide. He left, the weight of command and desperation driving him forward. Somewhere in the city, Jarvis was alone, sick, maybe dying, and his daughter was dying without her. Time was running out for both of them. If you're feeling this story deep in your chest, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment. Are you Team Jarvis or Team Minji? Because what happens next will test everything they believe about family, loyalty, and whether love is worth dying for. Seoul at night was a city of neon and shadows, a million lights that somehow made the darkness deeper. Minji drove through rain-slicked streets. His phone pressed to his ear as Junho coordinated search teams across the city. Nothing from the hospitals, Junho reported. No Jane Does matching her description. Shelters say they haven't seen any Black American women in the past week. Keep searching, Minji said. Hotels, motels, anywhere. Boss, if she doesn't have money. Junho didn't finish the thought. If she doesn't have money, she's on the streets. And on the streets, a foreign woman alone. Minji's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He couldn't let himself think about what might have happened. Not yet. What about the staff? He asked. Did anyone give her emergency contacts? Reference information? We checked. She listed the employment agency as her only contact in Seoul. Before that, a Los Angeles address, an apartment she stopped paying rent on 2 months ago. Because she'd fled after losing Jaylin. Fled across the world to escape the memories, only to land in Minji's house and save another baby at the cost of breaking herself open again. And he'd thrown her out. The guilt was crushing. Day 1 of the search turned into day 2. Day 2 became day 3. Rain's condition continued to deteriorate. The doctors were talking about life support, about preparing for the worst. Minji split his time between the hospital and the streets. He drove through every neighborhood, showing Jarvis's photo to anyone who would look. Most people ignored him. Some took the photo, studied it, shook their heads. On the morning of the 4th day, Minji was about to return to the hospital when his phone rang. Unknown number. Yes? Are you the man looking for the American woman? The voice was old, rough, speaking Korean with a heavy accent. Minji's heart stopped. Yes. Do you know where she is? My name is Howard. I'm a pastor. I run a ministry for the homeless in Itaewon. He paused. A woman matching your description has been staying near the old railway bridge. She's sick. Very sick. If you care about her, you should come quickly. Minji was already running to his car. Give me the exact location. The area beneath the railway bridge was a forgotten corner of Seoul, a place where the city's most vulnerable gathered, invisible to the millions who passed overhead. Makeshift shelters of cardboard and plastic sheeting, the smell of unwashed bodies and desperation. Minji parked illegally and ran toward a group of people huddled around a barrel fire. An old man looked up, Korean, but dressed in Western clothes that had seen better days. A pastor's collar hung around his neck. Howard? Minji asked. The old man nodded, studied him for a moment, then gestured. Follow me. They walked deeper under the bridge, past clusters of homeless individuals who watched with wary eyes. Finally, Howard stopped beside a makeshift shelter. Plastic tarp stretched over a shopping cart, a thin blanket visible inside. She's been here 3 days, Howard said quietly. Feverish, not eating. We tried to get her to a hospital, but she kept saying she had no money, no insurance. Said she was fine. He shook his head. She's not fine. Minji knelt beside the shelter. Jarvis? No response. He pulled back the tarp. She was curled on her side on the concrete, wrapped in a thin blanket that did nothing against the cold. Her face was gaunt, her lips cracked and bleeding. Her skin burned with fever even from inches away. Jarvis, he said again, louder. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Am I dead? Her voice was barely a whisper. No. Minji carefully gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. No, you're not dead. And neither is Rain, but she will be without you. Jarvis tried to pull away weakly. You threw me away. The words cut deeper than any knife. I know. I was wrong. I was a coward. His voice broke. Please, Jarvis. Don't let her pay for my sins. Don't let her die because I was too afraid to admit I need you. She looked at him then. Really looked. Her fevered eyes finding his face in the darkness. Rain? She's dying. Attachment trauma. She won't eat, won't sleep. The doctors say she's grieving for you. He pulled her closer, feeling how fragile she'd become. Please, come back. Save her again. Tears slid down Jarvis's face. Why should I? You didn't believe me. You chose your pride. I chose wrong, Minji said fiercely, about everything, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me. But right now, my daughter needs you. And I... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. You what? Her voice was faint. I need you too, he finished quietly. More than I've needed anyone since Soyeon died. Maybe more than I've needed anyone ever. Jarvis stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded weakly. Take me to her. Minji stood with her in his arms, turning to Howard. Thank you. For protecting her. For calling me. Howard nodded. Take care of her, son. She's been through more than anyone should have to bear. I will, Minji promised. I swear it. He carried Jarvis to his car, settled her in the passenger seat, wrapped his jacket around her shaking frame. She was already drifting in and out of consciousness, the fever burning through her. He drove toward the hospital like a man possessed, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. Stay with me, he said. Just a little longer. Rain needs you. I need you. Jarvis's fingers tightened weakly around his. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here. But even as she said it, her grip was loosening, her breathing shallow. Minji pressed harder on the accelerator, rain hammering against the windshield, Seoul's lights blurring past. Hold on, he thought desperately. Both of you, just hold on. Minji burst through the hospital doors carrying Jarvis, shouting for help. Nurses rushed forward with a wheelchair, but he refused to put her down, following them instead to Rain's wing. Sir, she needs medical attention. My daughter needs her more, Minji said. 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, then you can treat her. The nurses looked at each other, then at the determination on his face, and reluctantly agreed. Minji carried Jarvis into Rain's room. The baby lay motionless in her crib, eyes half closed, skin pale as death. The monitors beeped slowly, too slowly. Dr. Kim was there, checking vitals. He looked up, shocked. Mr. Park, this is Jarvis Omens, the woman who saved Rain. Minji gently lowered Jarvis into the chair beside the crib. Let her try. She's clearly ill herself. Please, Minji said quietly. What do we have to lose? Dr. Kim hesitated, then stepped back. Jarvis leaned forward, her hands shaking as she reached into the crib. She carefully lifted Rain, the baby's tiny body frighteningly light. For a moment, nothing happened. Rain lay limp in Jarvis's arms, barely breathing. Then Jarvis began to hum. It was a lullaby, soft, wordless, full of grief and love in equal measure. The same melody she'd hummed to Jalen in those final moments. The same melody she'd hummed to Rain that first night. Rain's hand twitched. Then her fingers curled around Jarvis's thumb. Her breathing deepened. Her eyes opened, just slightly, and found Jarvis's face. The monitors began to change, heart rate increasing, oxygen levels rising. Impossible, Dr. Kim whispered, watching the screens. Jarvis pulled Rain closer to her chest, still humming, tears streaming down her face. I'm here, baby girl. I'm here now. I won't leave you again. Rain's mouth began to move, searching instinctively. Jarvis glanced at Minji, a question in her eyes. He nodded immediately. Whatever she needs. Jarvis unbuttoned her hospital gown with trembling fingers and brought Rain to her breast. The baby latched on weakly at first, then stronger. Within moments, she was nursing steadily. The room fell into stunned silence. Dr. Kim checked the monitors again, shaking his head in disbelief. Her vitals are stabilizing, heart rate normalizing. This is... He couldn't finish. Love, Minji said quietly, watching them. This is love. Over the next hours, the transformation was remarkable. Rain's color returned. Her breathing steadied. She nursed, slept peacefully in Jarvis's arms, then woke and nursed again. Jarvis refused to put her down. even when the nurses came to check on her own fever. "I'm fine," she kept saying. "Just let me hold her a little longer." Minji sat in the corner, watching. At some point, Junho arrived with food, with updates on the organization, with questions that needed answers. Minji sent him away. "Not now. Nothing's more important than this." As night fell, Jarvis finally allowed the nurses to examine her. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, a respiratory infection that would have become pneumonia in another day or two. They insisted she needed IV fluids, antibiotics, bed rest. Jarvis agreed to everything, as long as they let her stay in Rain's room. Dr. Kim, seeing how Rain responded every time Jarvis so much as shifted position, agreed. They brought in a second bed, set up an IV, positioned everything so Jarvis could reach Rain's crib without getting up. Minji stayed through all of it. Finally, near midnight, when Rain was sleeping peacefully and Jarvis was drowsing under the effects of antibiotics, she spoke. "Why did you really fire me?" Minji had been sitting in the chair by the window, his eyes on both of them. He'd known this question was coming, dreaded it. "Because I was afraid," he said quietly. Jarvis opened her eyes, looking at him. "Of what?" "Of what it meant that a stranger cared more about my daughter than I did. Of what it meant that I felt something when I saw you holding her." He stood, moving closer. "My whole life has been about control. My father died because he lost control, got emotional, made mistakes. I swore I'd never let that happen." "So you pushed away anyone who made you feel?" "Yes." He sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to disturb the IV line. "When Soyeon died, I shut down completely, threw myself into work, barely looked at Rain because every time I did, I saw what I'd lost." His voice cracked. "Then you came into my house, and in one night you did what I couldn't do in 2 months. You made my daughter feel loved." Jarvis's eyes filled with tears. "And when I found you holding her, something inside me shifted. I saw what my life could be if I wasn't so afraid, and it terrified me more than any enemy ever has." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "So I did what I've always done. I eliminated the threat, removed the variable that made me vulnerable. I'm not a threat, Mr. Kao. Park. Minji," he corrected softly. "And you are. You're the greatest threat I've ever faced. Because you make me want to be someone different, someone better, someone worthy of..." He stopped. "Worthy of what?" He looked at her. This woman who'd given everything, lost everything, saved everything. "Worthy of being loved." Jarvis squeezed his hand weakly. "You don't earn love, Minji. You just accept it. Or you don't." "I want to," he said. "I don't know if I know how, but I want to try." He paused. "If you'll let me." Before she could answer, Rain stirred in her crib, making small sounds. Jarvis started to get up, but Minji gently pressed her back. "Let me." He crossed to the crib and carefully lifted his daughter. She was so small in his hands, fragile, dependent, trusting. When had he last really looked at her? When had he last allowed himself to feel the weight of being her father? He brought her to Jarvis, who helped him position Rain to nurse. For a moment, the three of them were connected. Minji holding his daughter, Jarvis feeding her, all of them breathing in sync. "This," Jarvis whispered. "This is what family looks like." Minji's eyes burned. "I want this. Every day. Every moment." He looked at her seriously. "Stay. Not as staff. As family. Let me protect you the way you've protected Rain. Let me give you both everything I have." "I don't want your money." "I'm not offering money. I'm offering a home. A place where you're not invisible or disposable or alone." His voice dropped. "I'm offering a family. If you'll have us." Jarvis looked down at Rain, peacefully nursing, her small hand resting on Jarvis's chest. She thought of Jaylin, would always think of Jaylin, but maybe that was okay. Maybe loving Rain didn't mean forgetting her daughter. Maybe it meant honoring her memory by making sure another baby never felt alone. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Okay, we'll try. She looked up at him, her eyes clear despite the fever. But Minji, if you ever throw me away again, I won't, he said fiercely. I swear on my life, on my daughter's life, I will never make that mistake again. Rain finished nursing and fell asleep between them. Minji carefully moved her back to the crib, then returned to sit beside Jarvis's bed. They stayed that way through the night. Minji in the chair, Jarvis in the bed, Rain in the crib. A makeshift family, held together by nothing but choice and desperation, and a love that had been forged in the worst possible circumstances. But as dawn broke through the hospital windows, painting them all in soft gold light, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they'd found something worth fighting for. Something worth living for. Something that might actually be called home. A week later, Rain was released from the hospital. Dr. Kim pronounced her fully recovered, with strict instructions that Jarvis remain as her primary caregiver. The bond is too strong to break again, he told Minji privately. That baby knows who saved her, who loves her. Don't separate them. Minji had no intention of it. Jarvis was also recovering, the antibiotics and rest bringing color back to her face, strength to her movements. But she still tired easily, still needed time to heal. When they arrived at the mansion, everything had changed. Mrs. Park waited at the entrance, her face composed but her eyes uncertain. She approached Jarvis slowly. Miss Omens, I owe you an apology. Her voice was formal but genuine. I was wrong about you. Wrong about everything. You saved my granddaughter's life. Twice. And She stopped, emotion breaking through her control. I almost cost both of them everything because I was afraid. Jarvis shifted Rain in her arms. I understand fear, Mrs. Park. It makes us do things we regret. Yes. The older woman's eyes glistened. But understanding doesn't erase the harm. If there's anything I can do to make amends. Help me take care of her, Jarvis said simply. Teach me about your culture, your family. Let me be part of this, not just someone on the outside. Mrs. Park nodded, relief evident on her face. I would be honored. Inside, Jarvis discovered she'd been moved to a suite on the family floor, not the servants' quarters. The room was beautiful. Large windows overlooking the garden, a private bathroom, a sitting area. And next door, connected by an interior door, was Rain's nursery. So you can hear her at night, Minji explained, so she's never alone, and neither are you. The first days were an adjustment. Jarvis was treated as family, not staff. The other workers didn't know how to act around her. Some were warm. Others remained distant. Jarvis didn't care. She had Rain. And slowly, carefully, she was learning she might have Minji too. They fell into a routine. Mornings were for Rain, feeding her, bathing her, playing with her as she grew stronger each day. Afternoons, Minji would join them. At first he was awkward, uncertain how to interact with his daughter, but Jarvis guided him. Like this, support her head. She likes when you talk to her. She knows your voice. Gradually, Minji relaxed, began to smile when Rain grasped his finger. Started coming to the nursery first thing in the morning instead of heading straight to his office. His organization noticed the change. Some approved, seeing their boss finally engaged with life instead of drowning in grief. Others worried about the foreign woman's influence. Minji made his position clear in a meeting with his senior men. Jarvis Omens is under my protection, completely. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Anyone who threatens her threatens my family. His eyes swept the room. Are we clear? The message spread quickly through the organization. Most accepted it. Those who didn't were invited to find employment elsewhere. Evenings became Jarvis's favorite time. After Rain was asleep, she and Minji would sit in the garden, the same garden she'd once cleaned as invisible staff. He taught her basic Korean. She taught him to let his guard down. You don't have to be in control every second. she told him one night. It's okay to just be. I don't know how to just be. Then learn. For Rain. For yourself. She paused. For us. Us. He repeated softly. I like the sound of that. 6 weeks after their return, Minji invited Jarvis to the garden after Rain's bedtime. She found him standing near the koi pond, something in his hands. I need to tell you something, he said when she approached. Jarvis's heart jumped. Okay. In my world, we seal oaths with blood. Family ties, business contracts. Blood is the ultimate promise. He turned to face her, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. But I want to give you something different. He opened his hand. A gold ring lay in his palm. Delicate, antique, beautiful. This was my grandmother's. My father's mother. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. Survived the war. Raised 6 children alone after my grandfather died. Built a life from nothing. He held the ring up to the light. This ring represents legacy, survival, family. Jarvis's breath caught. I'm not asking you to love me, Minji continued. I don't deserve that yet. Maybe I never will. But Rain loves you. And I. He took a breath. I need you both. More than I need this empire, this life, any of it. He dropped to one knee. Please, Jarvis. Be my family. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that you're not disposable, not invisible, not alone. Let me protect you and honor you and build something real with you. Tears streamed down Jarvis's face. Minji. If you need time, I understand. If you want to say no, I'm not looking to replace what you lost, she interrupted. Soyeon was Rain's mother. I would never. You're not replacing anyone, he said fiercely. You're creating something new, something that wouldn't exist without you. You're the reason my daughter is alive, the reason I'm alive. You gave us both a future when we had none. Jarvis looked at the ring, at this man kneeling before her, at the mansion that had once been her prison and was now becoming her home. She thought of Jaylin, would always think of Jaylin. But maybe her daughter's brief life could have meaning if it led to this. If Jarvis's grief and survival could save another baby, heal another broken man, build a family from ashes. If this is real, she said slowly, if you're truly choosing us over everything else, your pride, your reputation, all of it, then yes, I'll be your family. Minji's face transformed. He slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into an embrace. She felt his shoulders shaking, realized he was crying. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. Thank you. They stood that way for a long time, holding each other in the garden while Seoul's lights twinkled around them. Inside, Rain slept peacefully in her crib. Outside, guards patrolled the walls. And between those two worlds, violence and innocence, danger and safety, two broken people found that maybe love was possible after all. Even in the darkest places, especially in the darkest places. For 2 months, peace reigned. Jarvis integrated fully into the family. Mrs. Park taught her Korean traditions, how to prepare certain foods, the proper way to honor ancestors. Minji's men accepted her presence with varying degrees of warmth, but none challenged it openly. Rain thrived. She was sitting up now, laughing, reaching for Jarvis and Minji with equal joy. The mansion filled with sounds it had never held before. Baby giggles, lullabies, the soft conversations of a family finding its rhythm. Minji divided his time between business and family in ways he'd never managed before. He still ran his organization with an iron fist, but he came home for dinner. He spent mornings with Rain. He fell asleep most nights with Jarvis in his arms. It felt like maybe they'd actually pulled it off. Maybe they'd built something sustainable from the ruins of their separate tragedies. But Uncle Jin-ho had not been idle. Minji had exiled him, stripped him of rank and territory, but left him alive. A mistake, though he didn't know it yet. Jinho had spent those 2 months nursing his rage and making new alliances. The Kang Syndicate was more than happy to help. Minji Park was strong, but every man had a weakness. And Jinho knew exactly what his nephew's weakness was now. The woman. And the baby. On a perfect autumn afternoon, Jarvis took Rain to a private park in Gangnam, one of the few public spaces where she felt comfortable, protected by the bodyguards Minji insisted accompany them everywhere. Today, there were 3 guards, Junho, and 2 younger men named Dae and Sungmin. They maintained a discreet distance while Jarvis spread a blanket on the grass and let Rain explore the world with her hands and mouth. "Look, baby girl," Jarvis laughed as Rain grabbed at falling leaves. "Isn't it beautiful?" Rain babbled happily, her whole face lit with joy. Jarvis felt her heart swell. This was what life was supposed to be. Not the grief that had nearly destroyed her, not the fear that had driven her across the ocean. Just this, a baby laughing in the sunshine, a future that felt possible. She pulled out her phone to text Minji. "Your daughter is perfect. Get home early if you can." She was smiling at the screen when she heard the first gunshot. Everything happened at once. Junho was suddenly beside her, shouting, "Get down!" Dae and Sungmin drew weapons, positioning themselves between Jarvis and the park entrance. Smoke grenades exploded across the grass. Chaos erupted. Screaming civilians, more gunfire, the professional coordination of a team that had planned this carefully. Jarvis grabbed Rain and ran, her only thought to get the baby to safety. But the smoke was everywhere, disorienting, blinding. Someone tackled Dae from behind. Sungmin fired 3 times, then went down as well. Junho grabbed Jarvis's arm. "The car." He never finished. A bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell, still trying to shield them. Jarvis kept running, clutching Rain, who was screaming now, terrified. Then hands grabbed her from behind. She fought viciously, kicking, biting, screaming. Rain was ripped from her arms. She heard the baby's wails, tried to reach for her. "The baby goes to the park ranger," a voice said in Korean. "We were only paid for the woman." Relief crashed through Jarvis. They weren't taking Rain. Then horror, as she realized what that meant for her. She was dragged backward, her struggles useless against 3 men. A van door opened. She was thrown inside, zip-tied before she could fight back. The last thing she saw before the door slammed shut was Junho, bleeding but alive, shielding Rain's body with his own while he called for backup. Then darkness, and the sound of the van's engine roaring away from everything that mattered. Minji was in a meeting when his phone rang. Junho's name on the screen. He ignored it. They'd agreed no interruptions during the negotiation with the Japanese distributors. It rang again immediately. And again. Minji excused himself and stepped into the hallway. "This better be... boss!" Junho's voice was strained with pain. "They have her." The world stopped. "Say that again." "Coordinated attack. Gangnam Park. They took Jarvis." Junho was breathing hard. "I'm sorry. We fought, but there were too many. Professional team. They let Rain go. The baby's safe. With me. But Jarvis..." Minji was already running to his car. "How long ago?" 5 minutes. Black van. No plates. Headed west toward the docks. "Get Rain to the house. Full security. No one in or out without my direct approval." Minji's voice was deadly calm. "Then get medical attention. I'm mobilizing everyone." He hung up and hit speed dial. "Code red. Full mobilization. Lock down all our territory. Every man on the streets. I want that van found." Within minutes, 50 of his most trusted men were deployed across Seoul. CCTV footage was pulled. Informants were activated. Every resource Minji had built over 2 decades went active. And in his car, driving toward the docks with murder in his heart, Minji made another call. "This is Park Minji. I'm calling in every favor you've ever owed me. Every single one. Someone took my fiancée. Find her, or I'll burn this city down looking." The response was immediate. Even rival organizations owed him. Even enemies recognized that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Within an hour, he had a location. An abandoned warehouse on the waterfront. Old shipping facility, long out of use. Perfect place for the kind of thing his enemies had planned. Minji arrived with overwhelming force. Not just his men. He'd called in allies, associates, anyone who'd listen. Nearly 100 armed men surrounded the building. He didn't bother with negotiation, didn't waste time on demands. He simply said, "Go." And the building was stormed. Inside the warehouse, Jarvis sat zip-tied to a chair, her face bloody from the struggle. Uncle Jinho stood before her, his smile vicious. "He'll come for you," Jinho said. "That's the point. We'll kill him when he does, then take reign. The organization will be mine like it should have been from the start." Jarvis's eyes were hard despite her fear. "You don't know him. You don't know what you've started. I know he's weak. I know he's been weak since that foreign whore Soyeon died. And now he's even weaker because of you." Jinho leaned close. "Tell me, what's it like? Ruining a man just by existing?" "I didn't ruin him," Jarvis said quietly. "I saved him. And he saved me. That's what you'll never understand. Love doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable." Jinho laughed. "Romantic nonsense. Let's see how romantic you feel when—" The first explosion cut him off. The building shook. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Minji's men poured through the doors, not rushing, but moving with military precision. The Kong fighters tried to resist but were overwhelmed within minutes. And through the smoke and chaos came Minji himself, a gun in each hand, his face absolutely cold. He cut through his enemies like a force of nature. Anyone who raised a weapon died. Anyone who moved toward Jarvis died. He was methodical, efficient, terrifying. Finally, he reached the center of the warehouse. Jinho stood behind Jarvis's chair, a gun pressed to her head. "One more step and she dies." Minji stopped. The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of distant sirens. "Uncle," Minji said quietly, "this is your last chance. Walk away. Live. I'll even let you leave the country." "So you can hunt me down later?" Jinho spat. "You chose her over your blood, over your family. You deserve to watch her die." His finger tightened on the trigger. Jarvis threw herself sideways with all her strength. The chair tipped. She fell hard, the shot went wide. Minji's shot didn't. Jinho stumbled backward, blood spreading across his chest. He looked down in shock, then up at his nephew. You actually—" "I chose family," Minji said, moving forward. "You chose greed. You tried to murder my daughter. You kidnapped my wife. And you thought I'd let you live?" Jinho fell to his knees, gasping. "The organization will never accept her. They already have." Minji stood over his uncle, his face carved from stone. "And the ones who haven't, the ones who think like you, who see weakness where there's strength, they can join you in hell." Jinho died with his nephew's cold eyes the last thing he saw. Minji immediately holstered his weapon and ran to Jarvis. He cut her zip ties, gathered her into his arms. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm okay. Rain?" "Safe, home with Junho and my mother." He cupped her face, checking for injuries. "God, Jarvis, when I got the call—" She kissed him, hard and desperate and alive. "I knew you'd come. Always." He pulled back, his hand still framing her face. "Listen to me, all of you." His voice rose, addressing not just his men but the surviving Kang members being held at gunpoint. "This woman is Park Jarvis, my wife, my daughter's mother. Anyone who touches her answers to me with their life. Spread the word through every organization in Seoul, in Korea, in Asia. The Parks protect their own. Test that at your peril." He helped Jarvis to her feet, kept his arm around her as they walked through the warehouse. Bodies lay everywhere. His men parted to let them through, their faces showing respect, perhaps even awe. Outside, rain had started falling. Minji wrapped his jacket around Jarvis's shoulders. "It's over," he said. I promise you're safe. Jarvis leaned against him, shaking from adrenaline and relief. Take me home. I need to see Rain. Yes. He guided her to his car. Let's go home. Drop a heart in the comments if you're feeling this story. Tell me, would you have stayed? Would you have fought for a family that costed this much? Your stories inspire me, and I want to hear them. The aftermath of the warehouse battle rippled through Seoul's underworld. The Kang Syndicate, recognizing they'd picked a fight with the wrong man, formally requested peace. Terms were harsh. They surrendered territory, paid reparations, and agreed to leave the park organization alone permanently. Minji's status solidified. The men who'd questioned his strength saw what happened when someone threatened his family. He wasn't weak. He was something far more dangerous. A man with everything to lose, and the will to destroy anyone who tried to take it. But reputation and territory didn't matter much to Minji anymore. What mattered was sitting in the garden 3 weeks later, watching Jarvis teach Rain to clap her hands. What mattered was the sound of his daughter's laughter. What mattered was coming home to something real. Jarvis healed quickly, physically. The emotional scars took longer. She had nightmares about the kidnapping, about being separated from Rain. Minji would wake to find her checking the baby's room at 3 in the morning, needing to see her breathing. She's safe, he'd whisper, guiding her back to bed. We're all safe now. I know. I need to see her. He understood. They'd all been through trauma. They'd all been broken and put back together. 6 weeks after the warehouse, Minji made a proposal. Not to Jarvis. They were already engaged. This proposal was different. Marry me, he said. Officially. Let's make this legal, permanent, real. Jarvis smiled. It already is real. I know, but I want the world to know it too. I want Rain to grow up knowing we chose each other. Chose this family. He took her hand. I want to stand in front of everyone who matters and claim you as mine. Let you claim me as yours. So they planned a wedding. Small, private, mixing Korean and American traditions. Mrs. Park helped with arrangements, her relationship with Jarvis warming into something genuine. You've been good for him, she told Jarvis one afternoon while they were addressing invitations. He smiles now. He's present. I haven't seen him like this since he was a boy. He's been good for me too, Jarvis said. He gave me a reason to keep living when I thought my life was over. The wedding took place in the mansion's garden on a perfect autumn day. Rain was the flower girl, toddling down the aisle in a tiny hanbok, giggling as she scattered petals everywhere. Minji stood at the altar in a traditional Korean suit. Jarvis wore a fusion dress, American white lace with Korean silk embroidery. Beautiful and impossible to categorize, just like everything about their relationship. The ceremony was conducted by Howard, the pastor who'd helped save Jarvis. He spoke about families being made, not just born. About love being a choice you make every day, not just once. When it came time for vows, Minji went first. Jarvis, you saved my daughter. You saved me. You taught me that strength isn't about control. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable, to need someone, to choose love when everything says to choose fear. His voice thick with emotion. I promise to protect you, honor you, and spend every day earning the gift you've given me, a family, a home, a future. Jarvis's turn. She looked at this man who'd once thrown her away, and then moved heaven and earth to bring her back. Minji, you gave me a reason to believe in tomorrow again. You gave me a family when I thought I'd lost mine forever. You showed me that love can survive even in the darkest places. Maybe especially in the darkest places. She smiled through tears. I promise to stand beside you, to be Rain's mother in every way that matters, and to choose us every single day, no matter what. They exchanged rings. The grandmother's ring for Jarvis, a new one for Minji that Jarvis had designed herself. Simple gold inscribed with Korean characters. What does it say? Minji asked, studying it. Family first, she whispered. Always. His eyes shone as he slid it on. Howard pronounced them married. Minji kissed his wife like she was the only person in the world. Rain clapped and shrieked with joy, and everyone laughed. At the reception, Minji's men toasted the couple. Even the most hardened criminals seemed moved by what they'd witnessed. Two people who'd survived the worst life could offer and chosen to build something beautiful anyway. Mrs. Park gave a speech that had everyone in tears. When I first met Jarvis, I saw only what she wasn't. Not Korean, not from our world, not appropriate. I was wrong about all of it. What matters isn't where you come from. It's what you do with what you're given. Jarvis was given heartbreak and chose compassion. She was given nothing and gave everything. Welcome to the family, daughter. Officially. As the sun set, Minji and Jarvis slow danced in the garden, Rain asleep in Mrs. Park's arms nearby. Seoul's lights twinkled around them, but the fortress walls felt less like a prison now. More like protection for something precious. Are you happy? Minji asked, his lips close to her ear. Jarvis leaned back to look at him. I didn't think I'd ever be happy again after Jalen died. But yes, I'm happy. She smiled. Not because I've forgotten her. Because I've honored her by choosing to keep living. To keep loving. I think she'd be proud of you. I think Soyeon would be proud of you too. You're the father Rain deserves. The man she'd want raising her daughter. They swayed together as the last light faded. Around them, guards patrolled. Business continued. The machinery of Minji's empire kept running. But here, in this garden, in this moment, they were just a family. Imperfect, unconventional. Born from tragedy and forged in fire. But real, and whole, and theirs. 2 years later, the mansion had transformed completely. Rain's toys scattered across the pristine floors. Children's laughter echoed through halls that had once held only silence. Family photos lined the walls. Minji and Jarvis's wedding. Rain's first birthday. Holidays celebrated with joy instead of duty. Rain was walking now, talking. A bright-eyed toddler who called Jarvis Mommy and Minji Appa with equal love. She had no memory of those dark early months. All she knew was that she was loved, protected, cherished. Jarvis had started a foundation, helping single mothers, providing resources for women who'd lost children, creating support networks for the kind of grief she'd endured. Minji funded it fully, proud of what she was building. Minji himself had changed, too. Still ruthless in business when necessary, but present at home. He attended Rain's doctor appointments. He read her bedtime stories. He took family vacations. His men respected him more, not less. They saw that a man who would burn the world to protect his family was a man you wanted leading you. And when word spread through the underworld about what had happened, how Park Minji had destroyed anyone who threatened his wife and child, it became legend. A warning. Touch what's his, and you won't live to regret it. But inside the fortress walls, that legend was just a father playing with his daughter. A husband learning to be vulnerable with his wife. A family that had survived the worst and chosen each other anyway. One evening, as Jarvis put Rain to bed, the toddler asked a question she'd asked 100 times before. Tell story. Which story, baby? How you and Appa met? Jarvis smiled, stroking Rain's hair. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was very sick, and a woman who was very sad, and a man who was very afraid. But they found each other? Rain asked, her eyes already drooping. Yes, they found each other. And they became a family. Best family, Rain mumbled, already falling asleep. Yes, baby girl, the very best family. Jarvis kissed her forehead and turned to find Minji in the doorway, watching them with an expression that still made her heart skip. She's right, you know, he said as they walked to their own room. We are the best family. Jarvis took his hand. We're a family that chose each other. That's what makes us strong. Later, as they lay in bed, Minji's arms around her, Jarvis thought about the journey that had brought them here, the grief that had nearly destroyed her, the fear that had nearly destroyed him, the baby who'd saved them both. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" "For coming to find me, for not giving up, for choosing us when it would have been easier to choose pride." Minji pulled her closer. "There was never really a choice. From the moment I saw you holding Rain, some part of me knew. You were my second chance. Our second chance." "At what?" "At everything. At family. At love. At being the people we were meant to be all along." Jarvis turned in his arms to face him. "I love you." He smiled. The real smile, the one reserved only for her and Rain. "I love you too. More than I thought I could love anything. More than empire or power or pride." He kissed her softly. "You taught me that love isn't weakness. It's the only thing worth being strong for." Outside, Seoul continued its endless motion, 10 million people living 10 million separate lives. But inside the fortress, 3 people had found something rare and precious. A family forged not in tradition or bloodlines, but in impossible choices and desperate acts. A family that had survived poison and prejudice, betrayal and violence, grief and fear. A family held together by one simple truth. Love, real love, doesn't arrive gently. It comes through fire and blood, through sacrifice and survival. But when it survives all that, it becomes unbreakable. Sometimes love doesn't look like what we expect. Sometimes family isn't who we're born to, but who chooses to stay when everything falls apart. Jarvis and Minji's story reminds us that broken people can heal each other, that second chances are possible even after devastating loss, that choosing love, even when it costs everything, is always worth it. This story was about a maid and a mafia boss, but really it was about all of us, about the grief we carry, the fears that hold us back, the courage it takes to open our hearts after they've been shattered. For those watching who've lost someone, Jarvis honors Jalen by choosing to keep loving. Your loss doesn't mean your life is over. It means you understand how precious and fragile life is, and that makes you perfect for protecting someone else's. For those who've pushed people away, Minji learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. Opening your heart is the bravest thing you can do. The people who matter won't use your love against you. They'll honor it. And for everyone, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the stranger who saves you, the broken person who understands your pain. The choice you make to stay when leaving would be easier. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances are real, that love can survive anything, that families can be made, not just born. Drop a comment and tell us. 1. What part of this story made you cry? 2. Do you believe in second chances after devastating loss? 3. Have you ever had to choose between pride and love? What did you choose? Your stories matter to us. Your hearts matter to us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in love even when it's hard. For those who choose love over fear. For families made, not born. This is their story. And maybe, just maybe, it's yours too. If this story touched your soul, subscribe for more stories about love, loss, and the families we build from ashes. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Because these aren't just stories, they're reminders of what makes us human. Join our family. Subscribe now